quarter of a page, something like that, and you'll see a thing that says YouTube and recent interviews on a microphone. And to the right of that, there's a thing that says Show Images page. And if you click on that, Show Images page, it'll take you over to the page where I throw up various videos and stills and links to articles that I discuss on various shows. And one that's going to be there for a while is the one on Atlantis. At the moment, it's 4 rows down the middle. You'll see a big kind of blue picture with a green landmass in Atlantis and yellow on the top of it. And if you click that, it's going to take you to a whole new page of images just dedicated to what I'm going to be talking about here about Atlantis. I first started trying to find Atlantis back in 1988 when I was writing the Vindicator Scrolls Volume 1. I had already found what I thought was the Garden of Eden, and I was later in 2014, I was checking that information and found I'd made a mistake because I was able to use Google Earth, which I didn't have in 1988. And I found that I had to move the location up to Tanzania into the Ngorongoro crater. So when I was looking at that for a lecture I was going to give this year, already given it now in Colorado Springs, I looked at my notes on Atlantis as well. And I thought, well, if I made a mistake on Garden of Eden location because I didn't have the proper data, maybe I made a mistake on Atlantis, but I didn't. And I started digging into it, and now with the modern information like in sea bottom plotting and artifacts that are appearing in satellite photographs of the country I picked for Atlantis. Now that all that's happening, of course, I was able to expand my knowledge of not only where Atlantis was and is today. You can walk on it, but what caused it. And it was the what caused it thing, which was the link between Atlantis and the Garden of Eden. Now, if you study Hebrew myth and legend and Hebrew colloquial, writings and things that aren't part of the Bible or the Torah and the writings and stuff, you'll see that they mention that the flood of Noah, that the fountains of the deep were hot. They were boiling water and shot up into the air. And it said that the fountains of the deep were broken open. So I thought, well, now, when I thought I discovered Atlantis in Garden of Eden in 2014, the only big meteor, the biggest one on the planet that I could find that impacted was in the Gulf of Mexico near where you live, but down on the Yucatan Peninsula. And it was a big crater, a big meteor. And so I said, I think what happened was it hit there, and the shock wave bounced off the core and went over into the what's now the Indian Ocean and shoved to the southern part of India up into the Himalayas. And then I went on with my discussion about that's what caused the Great Flood. But I was not right. And as a result of looking for meteor or asteroid impacts over on the Indian Ocean side of the planet, I found not one, but 5 huge undiscovered meteor asteroid impacts on the planet. Very peculiar kind because they hit at a very shallow angle, like around 30 to 35 degrees. And it was so shallow it was almost enough for them to go through the rim of the planet, the mantle a bit sideways and exit the planet. Now, I don't think they did. I think they dug in, as I can explain later. But anyway, I found that in India, the East Coast has something called the Cuddapah Basin, Cuddapah Basin. And the Indian scientists and archaeologists and geologists are saying, this is a very old formation. It's kind of crescent-shaped and goes out into the ocean there. We think it must be part of a rim of a large meteor, but we can't find the impact to justify that. Well, it was because what happened was when this meteor hit, it hit almost right at the tip of where India and Sri Lanka were at the time, further south in the ocean. And it shoved everything up. Well, I take that back. It hit on the eastern flank where you see the rim now, the part of the rim. But because it moved the top of India up into the Himalayas, the southern half of India moved away from the real impact crater in the ocean bed. But if you look in Google Earth and Scripps Institute data files that they sent me, you don't see any impact crater, south of Sri Lanka and the tip of India. And I looked, and suddenly it leapt out of me just right in the face. Between the southern tip of India and that island of Sri Lanka, there's a round hole that's been filled in with sediment that's washed off the coast of both of them. It's a perfect round hole. It is the impact crater for the Kudapa meteor. But it didn't stop there. It hit sideways, going from left to right, or from west to east, in other words, and it shoved Australia, New Guinea, New Zealand, Indonesia, north, slightly north, and eastward into the Pacific region, and it left a crater that you can see now. If you look at my show images page for Atlantis, it says coast to coast AM 25 July, but go down 3 rows down, you'll see a blue picture number 6, it's labeled at the bottom, and it says band of sea formed by Kudapa asteroid. Now click on that and look at that. Can you do that?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Okay. You see that kind of rim shape at the right there where I've pointed the arrow? That's where that darn asteroid stopped.
Yeah, you can almost see the path of it where where it drug and then stopped right there where it just pushed up the
absolutely. And the weird thing is, when I was researching that and found that, I started looking for formal papers on geology of the ancient world, that were being done by various universities. And there was a university down in Australia called the Australian National University, and one of the research physicists, geologists, had been digging core samples on the northwest part of the coast of Australia. And if you're looking at that same picture, let's see if we can see that. Can we see that now? Let's see if okay, go down to picture number 8, which shows where India and Sri Lanka and Australia, where all of them were before the Kudapa meteor impacted. And if you look at the straight yellow arrow on the left coming out of the impact zone in India at that time, before the surface of India moved up to the Himalayas, you'll see that to the bottom part of that yellow straight arrow is the northwest of Australia. And if you look at that off the coast of Australia there, you'll see a light gray subterranean or suboceanic landmass. And it gets brighter gray, and it comes up into what's called Marble Bar. And there's a lot of volcanic activity in Marble Bar, has been for yonks. Anyway, he was drilling core samples down there, and he published a paper about 2 months before I contacted him. And it said, I've found evidence of a huge, as such, undiscovered asteroid, must be at least 15 miles in diameter, the asteroid itself, and it impacted and threw glass spherules, little balls of glass, all over Marble Bar. And I've been digging down through the core samples and finding it, but I couldn't find it. So I wrote to him, I said, happy days. I said, I found your asteroid. Here's where it is. Told him the story, showed him the diagrams. A couple days later, he wrote back and says, no, that can't be mine because it's in a different sedimentary period, so they're too far apart to have been the same thing. Again, caught by timing, the traditional secular timing rather than reformed timing, where we know that the universe is a lot younger than people think, and so is the Earth. But anyway, I thanked him very much, but it proved to me, along that path where that straight yellow arrow is, it threw hot glass beads from the impact all over northwest Australia, and it was locked into the sedimentary deposits there for him to discover. Now, sooner or later, he will come to the realization that I was right. And I'm writing a book now. I started to write the book because there's just so much to share. Look at picture 7. It's an animation, and that shows you 5 of the impact craters that only one of those 5 that I show there has actually been officially recognized as a meteor crater, and only recently. It's called the Eltanin asteroid. And if you move down to where you can see the purple arrow, it's at the southern tip of Argentina.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
It makes, you can look at this on Google Earth, you cannot miss it. It makes the same kind of pattern as the Kudapa did up in the Banda Sea. We just looked at it in slide 6. Now, they said, wow, this thing hit and it left all this stuff. And where the head of the arrow is, if you look at it on Google Earth, you'll see that there's that rim, where it slowed down and stopped and pushed up, a bunch of stuff ahead of it. It pushed up what's called ophiolite, which is seabed and mantle, as it shoves it up. And all along that rim is where we see a lot, the majority of earthquakes in the southern pole region. And the same thing at the Banda Sea in Indonesia. If you look there, you'll see how many earthquakes occur at the edge of the rim, pushed up in the mantle by this, asteroid.
Well, and also, Stan, I'm looking at this is the one image that I think it's image 7. If you look very closely, you can see where the Mariana Trench and all those things, all those fault lines. Could this impact be the cause of a lot of those faults?
Oh yeah, look, that yellow arrow goes right into the Marianas Trench. It hits. Yeah. It starts in the Philippines where it hit, and it goes there. And in this animation, I didn't put my other one I discovered, which is in that blank space to the left of the Marianas Trench and that yellow arrowhead, right in the middle of it, go up until you hit green.
Right.
And there's another one that hit there and shoved the path left by the yellow arrow. It shoved that path southward. It was a bit. These things, it almost acted like the surface of the planet was molten or very plastic, very mushy. And there's a red one going through China. It comes out in the North Atlantic.
Or could it have been such an impact it liquefied it?
Oh, well, look, that's probably it, because it did that. And I found one out in the middle of the Pacific, or South Pacific, I guess, that's the green arrow, which goes straight into like where Chile, Peru, and those areas are. And it is another impact crater like that's been covered up, but you can see it in Google Earth. So I'm terribly excited about this because
this is interesting. Let me tell you why, Stan, because you're talking about places now the antipode from the Temple Mount, right?
Am I?
Yeah, right around. I'm trying to think of that islands. It would be in that area, right between. If you look between Australia up to Chile, the antipode is right there in the South Pacific. Yeah. Sure is, and that's interesting to me because of, look, I'm going to go way off a deep end right now, and I'm going to say that word CERN because there's a lot of things that are anomalous about this with what CERN is doing. I've done a lot of research on this, where you're talking about right now is right around the antipode of the Temple Mount. So you probably, I don't know that I should get into that any more than that right now. Maybe we discuss it privately, but that, what kind of ramifications that has according to prophecy, anything that, opposite of what the Temple Mount would be. So.
Yeah, because like that's, Jerusalem or Israel is the apple of God's eye, in spite of it being stiff-necked and whatever. But when all the continents were together, what scientists call Pangea, if Israel was the center of all that,
the navel, activity, the belly button, right?
The belly button. Then, as they broke apart and spread around, the center of the antipodal point of the Temple Mount in the Pacific would have just been in the area that was originally ocean on the exact opposite side, of the planet.
Right.
Now, in fact, go to slide 1. It's a very colorful slide. And it is done by NASA, and you can see the outlines of the continents there.
Right.
And you can see the Pacific there. The blues and purples and yellows and reds are altitudes, deviations from a perfect sphere. Now, the Earth is not perfect; it's kind of teardrop shaped in a little bit, But on this perfect flat surface of the Earth, there are anomalies where something depressed the surface over many, many square miles, and where something else pushed the Earth up.
Right. And it had to go. The crust had to go somewhere.
Right. And what you see there in the magenta, underneath the tip of India, where I told you that big meteor hit, that's where it hit, and it shoved 6 million square miles of seabed and mantle over, following that yellow arrow, underneath New Guinea, and that's why there's a mound raising up there now,
creating the Ring of Fire.
Yes.
Absolutely.
6
I can
million
see it.
square miles.
I see it. I'm looking at it right now, and right where it would be, where it would start. If you follow that arrow out to the point at the edge of that ledge and follow it around, then you see the Ring of Fire.
You do.
Yep.